Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're pressure canning tomato sauce. Yay! I'm super excited to share this with you. As you know, if you follow the channel, I've bought the, my husband bought me the pressure cooker, so I've been experimenting this for ages and I have been doing research on how to pressure can properly and obviously the recipes and things like that way before I've actually got it. So finally, after all, I'm so excited to be able to start canning my own produce or produce that I find on the bargain deals in the supermarket. I did a batch of canned tomatoes actually yesterday. I did 5 half-a-litre jars. There was tomato and herb because I had a lot of basil and a lot of parsley. So I made tomato, basil, parsley and a bit of garlic sauce, and that turned out to be absolutely lovely. So in today's video, I am just making a tomato and garlic sauce. And of course, guys, like with everything, when I do something, I do obviously follow the rules and regulations, if you wish, in terms of the safety. However, I do like to have things simple. I do not like to overcomplicate things. So how I'm doing this, and this is literally how I make my sauce when I freeze my tomato sauce, which is what I used to do before I got the canner. But of course, the beauty of having a canned tomatoes rather than a frozen tomato sauce, because it doesn't take space in my freezer and it is shelf stable. So without further ado, guys, okay, we are making 2 1-litre jars, which are currently sitting in the back and are getting warm, okay, and I have 3 kilos of tomato. It does sound like a lot, guys, but trust me, because of the moisture content of the tomatoes, you do need approximately 1 to 1.5 kilos of tomatoes to produce 1 litre jar, which is quite a lot. However, this is how this goes. So I have a mixture of cherry tomatoes and normal tomatoes, okay, and I've seen many people, guys, that generally put the tomatoes in hot water just to crack the skin, and then they peel them and then they cut the core out. I'm like, what a ball ache. I don't have time to do this, especially if you do a bigger batch. Like if I did all of the tomatoes like I did yesterday and today all together, I'll be there for hours just blanching and peeling the tomatoes, and I don't see the need. And neither, guys, I do cut out the middle bit. I know it's maybe controversial, some people do, some people don't. However, because it's not a thick core, to me, I don't see a problem. And neither do I take the seeds out, because seeds are actually very healthy in the tomato and they're very good for our bodies. So without further ado, guys, how I'm doing this, I am literally cutting out tomatoes, okay, into whatever random shapes, and I'm gonna blitz them in a food processor. And then we're gonna cook them down in the saucepan, and then we're gonna drain the liquid. You can do this in the opposite way. You can cook the tomatoes first, and I've done this with the bunch of cherry tomatoes before. I put the tomatoes in the oven, I roasted them, and then I blitzed them, and then I strained them. But because it's a bigger batch, I don't think I'm gonna have a lot of space in the oven to do this. So literally, it's gonna be as simple as mixing the tomatoes in there. And the reason is, guys, why the people peel them is because they found that if you do this as a tomato, just the canned tomato pieces, obviously the skin is quite tough. So if you come to add it onto your pasta, you might have a massive chunk of a skin, which is kind of unpleasant. However, because we're literally blitzing this into tiny pieces, that skin is going to be tiny and totally unnoticeable. And trust me, I've been doing this like this for absolutely years, but obviously freezing and rather canning them. So this is how it goes, right? Hopefully, guys, you get to see. It's really awkward, I'm sorry, to film because so many things are happening, and obviously the canner is behind me. It's too heavy for here. So this is what I do. Okay, let's get them chopped. I should put it on first. That'd be a good idea. Here we are. This is what we get. You can strain this now, but you will still have to strain this after you cooked it. I've experimented a few times with the straining because I didn't really want, guys, because you know our jars, the space in them is so precious because the jars are so expensive, especially here, not especially here in UK, but they are expensive, especially if you just start in canning. If you have hundreds, it's not a problem. You can probably even can the sauce, which I know many people do. However, because they are literally at a premium, I kind of don't want to fill my jar with a lot of sauce and liquid. I just want to make sure I just have more tomatoes, because I can always add something on when I cook, and you do. Anyway, without further ado, guys, this is what we have, right? Is the tomato splats. Okay. And I'm going to continue with the rest. Get little ones in. To me, this just speeds up the whole process, you know. I'm not for, as I said, I'm not for sort of messing around, and life's too short, it's too complicated to stand around and waiting and blanching your tomatoes. And as long as we cook that absolutely like 100% properly, that'd be no problem whatsoever. So last two left. And one thing, guys, again, like with any preservings, make sure there is no manky tomatoes. I've missed that one when I picked it, that one here. It's too soft and it's no good, so it's not going in. So make sure, if you can cut some bits out, absolutely fine. But if it's gone sort of too mushy, too far gone, we don't want that in our preserves. And I have some garlic cloves. Okay, I have 7, and I'm putting them in there. Okay. Many people say, like especially with the herbs, obviously I'm not adding on herbs on this one. I've done a batch yesterday with the herbs, but people say, oh, you shouldn't add on herbs when you cook. You should add them on literally last minute before processing. To me, again, in my opinion, it's not to say it's wrong, but it's not something I would choose to do. I choose to infuse my herbs, and I know when my tomatoes were cooking, the herbs there have infused the whole sauce. So yes, the herbs in general might have lost their individual taste as per se. However, the whole sauce is infused with the taste of the herbs. So I don't, I'm not going to be following the advice of putting the herbs last minute. I'm going to add on the sauce. The same comes with the adding on your seasoning, like salt and sugar. Rather than doing this adding onto the jar, I'm adding it to the whole batch because I wanted to make sure my whole batch is universal and it is the same. So next things first, I'm just going to get this all cleared up, and we'll see what's happening here. So all cleared up. And for all of you who might be asking, you know, when I mean clearing up, it doesn't mean I'm going to run around and going to clean it all. That means let's just go and hide it away from the camera, and we'll deal with that later. So there we are. So this is what we have with our tomato sauce now. And we're now going to cook it. Put it on. The idea is, guys, once it's on the heat, of course, as you know, when you cook the tomatoes, they'll release any more juice. So if you'll sit there for a little bit after it's cooked, it will start to separate. This is exactly what we need. We don't need to wait for it to separate. We just need it to cook off the liquid, and obviously to separate. Oh, sorry. Let's actually put it on. Let's do 1600. Okay. Sorry. Let's go again. Yeah. So we need it for it to cook and obviously release all the moisture from the tomatoes. As we said, we really don't want to have too much liquid in there. I did a mistake on one of my runs when I did the tomato sauce. I've put too much, I've drained some liquid and then I left a little bit too much liquid. When you pressure can it, obviously it separates. It's normal to have a separation, but I found that it was just too much liquid in there. And this is liquid, it's not particularly the tastiest liquid, if you wish. Like raw tomato juice, it's not the best, in my opinion anyway. So, well, that looks, at the moment, looks like we have enough to fill the 2 jars, and I do hope that it's going to be okay. So I'm going to add on a little bit of salt. I'm adding on pink Himalayan salt. Again, guys, you've got to do this to taste. Some people choose not to add this at all. I am adding it. Obviously, salt is a preservative as well. Okay, and with the tomatoes, as you guys know, it's a lot of contradicting information in terms of whether you can water bath can them or you should pressure can them. Apparently, it's now people saying it's okay to water bath can the tomatoes, providing you get the acidity correct. Although it's difficult to determine acidity of your tomatoes, adding on citric acid or lemon juice is the way forward. So I'm going to be going and I'm going to be adding the lemon juice later on. This is the thing that I do add per jar, just in case, guys, if, for example, I have more than 1 jar or not enough, basically, I'm not going to have enough citric acid in each jar. So I'm going to make sure that the lemon juice will be per jar, dispensed as per jar, and obviously everything else will go all together after. So guys, we've got to now let it cook for a good 15-20 minutes. So we now have our tomato sauce. I'm going to just turn this off all together for the minute. What I'm going to do, guys, now, I'm going to strain the sauce now. I have the sieve and I have another saucepan, so after the if the sauce gets too cold, obviously I'll warm this up in this one before putting this into our jars. Again, obviously be careful, it is going to be splattery. Okay. And just to let you guys know, for whoever that might be wondering, in terms of the sauce, I'm making this kind of sauce specifically for specific pastas that I would like to have. This is the sort of pasta where you have a little bit of the tomato and you add on some prawns or some seafood, where you can sort of have the pieces, little pieces of tomato rather than being a passata. There are other ways that I'm doing the sauces for different kind of pastas, but I am deliberately making this sauce this way for specific pastas. Again, we all eat, if you like pasta, obviously that's why you're making the tomato sauce, but you all have your own favorites of what's and how you like to eat your pasta. And this is kind of thing I enjoy having, and this is how we're making that. So, and I will share the other recipes with you guys, not a problem at all. So you can see now we're draining a lot of liquid. So that's going to go back in here. I am keeping that liquid here because if for some reason I don't have enough, okay, to fill my 2 litre jars, 2 1 litre jars, I can just put a little bit of juice on top. It is a messy job, but somebody's got to do this. And he's not one of those guys, like, you got to do, I think, when you do a canning stuff, you got to sort of prep and gear yourself up for a lot of your time kind of around doing that, especially if you're doing a big batch, because it is so time consuming. And it adds on, especially if you got to film. It doesn't help, but I want to share because I know many people want to, and I guys have, and I've mentioned before, I have OCD. So to me, the food security as well, but the food safety as well, it's a paramount. So for me, I'll overdo things to make sure everything is safe rather than underdo it. But that's okay, there's nothing wrong with that. It smells yummy. I can smell the garlic in there. There's a lot of juice coming out. And guys, if honestly, as I said, if jars weren't an issue, you can just can that juice and use it for something else. But unfortunately, I might think of, it's a good like a soup base, you know? A good soup base. I'll see, I might just tomorrow do something with that, I don't know. We'll see. It's just a waste. And nobody likes waste. Okay. Let's do it again. Last one, I think. My jars are steaming there nicely. The idea, obviously, is you probably know that having them hot, so when we're having that hot tomato sauce going in there, that's okay. If the sauce is not boiling, so long as the jar are similar temperature, then there's no issue at all. Again, I've done some bits with a cold pack, what they call it, so you put the cold products and then put them in there, that's absolutely fine. As long as the temperature of the jars, or temperature of the inside of the jars or the product, is the same as the temperature outside of the water inside the canner, if that makes sense, then you are absolutely fine. Because you can't, as I understand, you can't really over-process a tomato. It is what it is. You can't overcook it. It'll get maybe a bit more drier, but it will take a hell of a lot of overcooking for it to overdo itself. Okay. Right, last bit. Go in there. And there's still some liquid, some juices in there. Okay, so we have a good, probably I would say a litre and a bit of a very hot tomato juice, ouch, very hot. And we then have what we pretty much would call a passata. To be fair, it is still very hot. I can see this steaming. And my jars are now, they have boiled, but they are not boiling now. So I think that's perfect temperature for me to be able to get the stuff in. So I'm just going to empty some space here and I shall see you in a second. I kind of got myself a little bit of space by pushing everything ahead. So let's get our jars. So I've got my trusty, the other way, the trusty jar lifters. So let's get them out. You're going to have hell of a grip by the end of it, girls. Okay, that's one. And we have two. Be very careful because it's obviously it's very hot. Health and safety, health and safety. So, okay then, so we have our 2 super hot jars and we have our super hot sauce. I have my 2 tablespoon measures. Again, as per Ball Canning Guide, they suggest that you put for a litre jar, you put 1 tablespoon. I'm putting 2. I have OCD, guys, right? And as I said, I'd much rather be safe than sorry. The tomatoes there, they didn't taste that particularly acidic or not super fresh, but super ripe. You know how the fruit here. So I'm putting extra anyway. My personal choice, okay? My personal choice, guys. Many people don't like the acid, but to be fair, 2 tablespoons in a whole litre of sauce, or 2 tablespoons. You won't really taste it, sorry. You won't really taste it. I'm going to put 2. Here we go. Because in the end of the day, I want to make sure my food is safe for really, really long term. Okay. There you have it. Again, you can follow the guidelines. You can put less if you want to go. They're just me being me. So, got my colander. And we're now going to ladle our sauce in there. Okay. Do it. Because it's not like a really runny thing, you got to sort of help it along. Okay, I think we might be a tiny bit short, so let me do the second one, and then we're going to see how much we have left. And then I might add on some precious juice in there. You can see the crazy, right? The wastage. Oh, doesn't have to be wastage, but how much stuff do you need? Things like carrots and shouldn't be an issue because they don't really shrivel up a lot. Okay, well, you can see we are a tad short. On our sauce to fill it with as thick as I want it. However, that's not a problem. Let's get our liquid out, and I'm going to fill it up with our juice. It's still got a little bit of, not say pulp, but it's still got a bit of a tomatoey thing in it. So let's get this in. All that means I just have to make some adjustments, guys, when I'm cooking it. I wanted to say defrosting it then. We don't defrost it. Now, just going to make some adjustments when we are cooking the pasta. I'm just going to cook it out a bit longer. That's not a problem at all. I think when you cook, if you guys can, with literally like 20 kilos or something, it's no problem if one of them is short. But when you're doing 2, then it's slightly bit of an issue. Right, so we need it to be, guys, at 1 inch headspace from the top, okay? So I've got my little measurer. I'll just mix it all together. Okay. I need to add on a tiny bit more to that in a second. We'll do the same with that one. And this is 1 litre. That should be able to make us a dinner of a pasta or a lasagna. That actually could be better for lasagna. For 2 days for 3 people. We're using that to get the bubbles out. We don't want any bubbles in our preserves. Okay, we need a teeny weeny bit. We don't want to overfill that because it will potentially can overboil and leak. I think they call this siphoning, so we don't want that. Although it's still highly possible. Well, they haven't had any issues yet. Right, okay. So, let's check this out. Still short. Bit tad more. How many times can I add this on and it's not adding on? Here we go, right. Headspace adjusted. Right, wonderful. Okay, so I'm happy with that, guys. So I'm now putting on the lids. Got a little magnetic thing, which is, I think, is absolutely brilliant. Got that for Amazon, like including the whole kit, guys, for like $7.99 or something. It's ridiculously cheap. Oh yeah, sorry, forgot to wipe. Just wipe the rims, although I know I haven't put anything on there. Just wipe the rims. And again, I've seen some people saying use vinegar. I don't see why you want to use vinegar. Vinegar is acid. Acid ruins the seals. So to me, no, I'm not going to use vinegar. Maybe there's a reason, some other reason why people choose to do this. I do not want to use vinegar on my rubber seal because I had an issue before in my cupboard when I had some vinegary products, the vinegar eaten through the lid. So, right, let's stop talking, let's get lids on. Finger tight, not very tight. Should have centralized. Right, so according to a bowl guide, the bowl book, you need to process them at 68 kPa for 15 minutes after bringing them to the boil. So I'm going to put them in there now. I'm going to bring them to the boil with a closed lid, let the vents steam for 10 minutes, and then put the pressure valve on top, and I'm going to cook them for 15 minutes. Again, previously, guys, because I was doing research let me put them in, with the PSIs, and people said that between 13 and 15 is a good PSI. 13 and 15 PSI is actually higher than the KPA suggested by bowl. So my jars here yesterday, I've actually followed the PSIs and I've processed them at 13 PSI, which was 100 kPas, and they have came out okay. I haven't had an issue whatsoever. So I am in this instance, I'm just going to do as per bowl book, and I'm going to process them at 68 kPa for 15 minutes after bringing them to the boil. So I'm going to show you guys when it starts kicking in, and you see what's happening. So guys, you can hear this, it's been venting now for 10 minutes. So here goes our little valve, and there we are. So now I have to wait until it hits the 68 kPa, and then we'll hold this there for 15 minutes. So I'm going to see you there when they are ready. So we are done, guys. It's been boiling like crazy, and it's sometimes a bit scary. So I can see and understand why people somewhat feel a bit skeptical about started canning, because the pressure valve here, although it expels a little bit of heat, but once in a while when it trying to maintain the pressure, it will go crazy, it will spin around and produce a lot of noise and a lot of steam. But anyway, we are done. The idea is we need to let it to come to basically unpressurize naturally, and then we'll have to let it stand for a little bit to make sure the jars are going to be stable enough to get out. So I think we should be okay. It's taken ages, right? I'm almost going through a bottle of wine for the whole process. Okay, so nonetheless, okay, well, they are still here and they are still standing, so I am going to gently get them out. They're boiling inside still. Okay, right. Sorry, I'm going to have to carry them all the way across, but here we are, boiling. Right, okay guys, here we are. So we can see, right, this one here clearly, that's the one that had a bit more of a juice on top because it's, well, a little bit more watery altogether. However, that looks like it's a tiny bit of leakage on the side, but it doesn't look, it's quite normal to have a bit of siphoning apparently, so that's, I'm happy with that. None of them are cracked. And then many people, again, in UK, skeptical about using the jars from the home bargains. They are absolutely fine. You can see, guys, they withstanded the higher pressure than kind of intended, or so yes, that they are absolutely fine. And I haven't had any lid failures. I've been using them for pickles as well, many other things, and the lids, when they're sealed, they seem to be a-okay. So here we are. So things, guys, is with the tomato products especially, we need to put them in still in a draft-free area, and we do not want to put the towel over the top of them, and we do not want to put them too close together. Apparently, it's another bacteria that creates what we call a flat sour. That means it basically spoils your tomatoes inside and make them to go sour and bitter, but because they're called flat, it doesn't create carbon dioxide. So that doesn't mean that the lid does not bulge up. So basically, it's another bacteria that actually loves heat. So leaving the jars, like I said before, leaving the jars for too long in a canner, it's out of the question. I know I've seen many people saying that you can leave them there overnight. Absolutely not. According to my research into the bacteria stuff, I would not myself. Again, it's a personal choice, guys, but I've been doing the research for ages, so do not leave them in a canner overnight to cool down naturally. It's not a good idea. If you have too many jars, do not stack them really close together, because again, you need space for them to breathe and cool up naturally, but quick enough. So as I understand, guys, the more heat is there when they're standing under the towel, it just creates the unpleasant or pleasant environment for unpleasant bacteria. Flat sour is not something we want to have, because you won't even know it's happening. So as me being me, of course, guys, we'll put them on a mile apart, and we're going to let them sit there and cool down for as long as they need, really. Again, when I do the canning so far, I've been leaving stuff here in the kitchen in this pot here overnight until the stuff fully cooled. It's not drafty, we have airflow, so they're not too close together, and that's that. So I'm very, very happy, guys. I'm so happy, and I'm so happy to share this with you. I know many of you, or many of my subscribers, wanted to start canning, and everybody's sort of a bit skeptical, and things happen. Things can go wrong, of course. I think things, like for me, if I do something else, things of course can go wrong. It depends on many, many things. However, I'm just so pleased to be able to see the final results of my 3 kilos of tomatoes. And my husband, question my husband says, goes, do you know how much costs you in electricity? And like, no, but the point is there, if we want to preserve our own produce or ability, understanding and knowing when we need this, I know the knowledge, I'll have the jars, I have, the produce growing there. So it doesn't matter how much it'll cost, because we're gaining knowledge, guys. As a preppers, it's so important to just understand and learn how to do things. And just even if you don't use the knowledge or the skills, it's having this up there just in case. This is all the prepping is all about. Anyway, I'm going to stop chatting. I'm going to finish the reminder of my wine, whatever that was now. I do hope you enjoyed the video. If you do have any questions, please comment below, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.